Good evening, South Orangetown families and friends. This is Dr. Robert Pritchard for the third and final webinar in our series for parent information sessions. And this evening, we have about 90 minutes together. And before I get into our program tonight, I want to take a few minutes to provide you with some insight that I've learned in having spent some time with you all in these sessions. I've learned a lot, and I've gained a lot of insight. You've given us a tremendous amount of valuable information to work with in order for us to have what I think is going to be, obviously, a reopening like no other. So a couple of things before the night gets away from us. First, as I've said, I've enjoyed these sessions. I think they're a very valuable tool for us as a community to share ideas, and I'm very, very pleased at how productive these sessions have gone for us in terms of exchanging information and knowing where we are at in terms of our feelings and our thoughts and our ideas, and turning those ideas into action. So for that, this is something I would like to continue to do. I hope you feel the same way. If you have any suggestions about how we might want to do more of these in the future, please share those in the chat in the chat group tonight, or send me an email. But certainly, I am so appreciative of all the information that I've learned and knowing what is important to our families as we move into what I know will be an incredibly great year, but again, it's going to be a year like no other. So I'm anxious to get started, and I know you are too. We've done 3 of these, well, we're in our 3rd session. We've done 2 of these sessions already, and I've received a few emails from folks over the past few days asking questions, clarifying questions, and making requests that are unique and specific to family situations or situations involving their students' return to school. And some of those requests, all of those requests are certainly valid in the sense that families are looking for accommodations for their students that are meaningful, but those are not necessarily requests that we may or may not be able to make right away. For instance, I know that there's been some concern about the alphabet and alphabetizing and sorting students by alphabet, and I know there's been some consideration or some requests that parents have asked to place students in other parts of the in a different group based on friend groups or study groups or those types of things, or childcare needs, and I know that those things are important, and I certainly don't mean to just outright flatly deny those requests, but I have denied those requests in most cases because it's really important that we get the year started, and it's important that you work through some of those issues with your building level principals and your teachers first. But let's get the year started because, as I said, it's going to be a very complicated scenario, and as we see how the year unfolds, how we open up, there could be space in other sections. There might be imbalances, or there might be opportunities to honor those requests, but I can't say that for sure right now. So please forgive me if I've denied any requests for special placements at this point. We don't typically do that because, again, there are some extenuating circumstances surrounding this year. Let's get the year open. Let's get started. Let's get everybody situated safely. And then let's see what the landscape looks like and whether or not we can actually honor those requests at a later time. The other, I've gotten a few emails. I've gotten actually quite a few emails about people who are families who are very, very happy and pleased that we are going to enforce the mask wearing. The overwhelming majority of folks in our chat group have been very pleased by the fact that we are, at least while we are still in this pandemic, are looking at to enforce that policy. But I know that there are some families who are disappointed by that decision because there is a feeling, and it's certainly not a widespread feeling, but there is a feeling that this that wearing of masks isn't necessary, and I would respectfully disagree with that for now. That maybe wearing a mask could be anxiety producing. And I can't say that whether or not that is I can't be certain whether or not that is the case. I'm not a mental health professional. But in most cases, the wearing of the mask, I would agree, it's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. It's not fun wearing a mask. My nose is itching just thinking about it right now. But sometimes we have to do things for the greater good. Sometimes we have to put the needs of others over the needs of ourselves, and that's something we teach here. It's something we teach when we talk about selfless service. It's things that we talk about when we talk about leadership, when we talk about patriotism, putting the needs of society above our own needs. So help us have those conversations with your young ones because they're not going to want to wear those masks any more than we do. But sometimes we have to do things that are uncomfortable and inconvenient because there's a lot at stake here. What may seem like an inconvenience to a young child who may be asymptomatic, and many of you have heard of the butterfly effect. A child who goes home or goes out in public and unknowingly spreads this infection to somebody who could get seriously ill. That's a heavy responsibility. That's a heavy burden for us as public servants, and we want to do the responsible thing and what we feel is the right thing. And the vast majority of people who are in this community feel the same way. It's a community-based decision, and it's one that I have a responsibility and a duty to uphold. So please, let's work together on that. And that's notwithstanding if your child does have a reaction to the mask that is creating anxiety or stress to the point where they don't want to come to school. We'll work together on that as well. Please, contact your principal, your child's teacher, and then we'll look at that more closely. Okay. So, but let's get this year started. Let's get this year moving. And let's do it safely. And again, I know I had this feeling a couple of months ago before we were getting ready to do our graduation ceremony for the Tappan Zee High School class of 2020. And I'll make this anecdote quick, but I'd gotten a lot of feedback from the community. People were concerned. People were, it was disconcerting. I mean, high school graduation is a very important day in the lives of our students. And to think that it was going to be somehow hampered or diminished by this COVID-19 was very sad for all of us. But it turned out to be a fantastic ceremony. And I would go so far as to say that it was a really good ceremony, and there's things that we're going to replicate going forward. We learned a lot. We overcame that hardship, and we made a fantastic event out of that, and we all worked together. And that was a really good feeling when we came together as a community and did something for the greater good. And looking back now, maybe some of the concerns that we were going into that with were maybe a little bit misplaced, maybe a little bit overstated. And I'm so proud of the fact that we were able to come together as a community and do great work. So that was sort of the feeling I'm carrying into the opening of the school. I feel like it's going to be great. I feel like it's going to be amazing. And let me just put this in context for you. I had a conversation with a dad this evening, and I hope he's listening. His name is Jason, great guy, and we had a conversation on the phone regarding what device to purchase. And Jason's daughter is entering kindergarten. So it was a real reality check for me and a very emotional moment for me. It moved me almost to the point of tears when I say this to you, that I had this visualization of a dad, obviously, who loves his daughter very much, and this 5-year-old kid standing at the bus stop with her Chromebook tucked under her arm, wearing her mask, getting ready to get on a school bus, people taking pictures and tears and all those things that accompany that first day of school, which is an incredible event in anybody's life, COVID or not. And we have a responsibility to that 5-year-old to make that and to that family to make it a special day. So I want to say thank you to Jason for that conversation we had this evening, and for all the Jasons out there, and for all those parents who are putting their sons and daughters on the bus for the first time on September 8th or the following Monday if they're in Group B. And we're going to make that a real special day, and we're going to make this the best school opening ever. And I'm fully committed to that. And we're going to do great work on behalf of those kids, and it's going to be an amazing day. But we've got a lot of work to do between now and September 8th. So let's get into it. Again, good evening. I'm Bob Pritchard, Superintendent. I forgot to introduce myself. Got a little carried away there for a moment. But tonight what we're going to do is we're going to recap and review and cover some of the information that came up in the chat room over the last 2 sessions. And, once again, go back over some of those topics that seem to be of critical importance to our community, and make sure that we have a common operating picture as it relates to school opening in the age of COVID-19. This is session 3. It's August 12th. It's 7 p.m., 7:14 p.m., and let's get rolling. Let's roll up our sleeves and have a good night here. So, as a recap, our reopening plan is based on a hybrid learning model with 50% student capacity with social distancing. Groups will physically attend school for full weeks, a full week meaning 5 days, with deep cleaning and sanitizing on the weekends. So Group A and Group B will be split, will be on alternating weeks, with a weekend in the middle to do that cleaning, a full 48 hours to get that work done. So neither group is going to have any sort of ability to cross-contaminate the other. We think it's important to keep those two separate. That was really an important feature of this plan. Group A is students with last names beginning with A through K. Group A will attend the first week of school in person, September 8th through September 11th. Group B is students with last names beginning L through Z. Group B will attend the second week of school in person, September 14th through September 18th. So, what options do families have regarding their children's participation? Well, you have 2 options, right? So those 2 options are, 1, you participate, your student participates in that hybrid 50-50 model that I just referred to, Group A being placed in Group A or Group B on a 1-week rotating basis. Or you have the option of participating in a 100% remote basis with no in-person school attendance. We asked folks to notify the district via a parent survey, which is posted on www.socsd.org, and you'll have an opportunity to make your selection there. We've had 2 sessions right now. After the last 2 sessions, we've seen an uptick in parents participating in the survey, and that's fantastic. So we know that we're getting some value out of these sessions, and that information, that data, your preferences are being submitted to the school principals, and they can start to make arrangements for your child in the classroom. Due to state guidelines and space limitations, the district is unable to accommodate requests for 100% in-person attendance at this time. Someday we hope to get there. Someday we will get there. Someday we're going to get back to normal. I know this. This is a step towards normalcy. However, we can't provide a 100% in-person attendance option for students right now. We don't have the space. We're limited on space. Even if we were to go outside of the district and try to rent space, it still wouldn't be enough, and it would create issues with transportation. So really, space is a finite resource, and trying to keep a distance, a suitable distance between students, so they don't have, they're socially distanced. We just don't have the space to accommodate a 100% in-person attendance. Students will participate as their families indicated on the survey. If parents choose the hybrid model, their students will be expected to participate in person on their assigned week. If parents choose 100% remote participation, their child will be expected to participate remotely full-time. Now, one of the aspects that have come up recently in our chat room has been regarding how do you change that? If you want to change options, can you, and how do you do that? Well, should you wish to change your response, please resubmit the survey with your revised decision by 8 a.m. tomorrow. And we're going to close the parent survey tomorrow at 8 a.m. So what will happen is your latest response will be the response that the principal gets. And we're going to use that for planning purposes. Does it mean you're locked into that? It does not mean you're locked into it. But that really is helpful for us to have that as best and as accurate information as possible, so we can plan accordingly. So if you would, and many of you have, and I appreciate this, but if you haven't signed in to make your response yet, kindly do so by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for that. Families may opt to change how their students participate once school starts. For parents who initially chose 100% remote participation and want to shift to hybrid participation, it may take up to 30 calendar days to transition their student to a hybrid in-person attendance, and parents should contact their building principal if they want to make that change, if they want to change the option for their student once school begins. Safety. First question under the category of safety is, will students and staff be required to wear masks indoors the entire school day, even when seated at desks or socially distanced? And I did speak a little bit about this in my introduction. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. However, we will provide scheduled mask breaks for students to catch their breath, to relax, to feel comfortable. Being in a mask all day long, as I mentioned, is very uncomfortable. It's certainly not an optimal learning situation, but truthfully, the public health concerns really outweigh those other individual academic learning priorities, because we want everyone to be safe, and we don't want to be in a situation where we're not being safe or promoting, inadvertently causing further spread of the COVID-19 disease. So this is a little bit different than the draft reopening plan that we had produced with our reopening task force, but much of the feedback we have gotten up until now has been centered on the fact that parents really, and families and students and teachers as well, do feel that this is something that's important in terms of preventing the spread of COVID. And there is certainly anxiety that is produced if they were to see somebody who gave the appearance of not being safe. So we want to make sure that everyone feels safe, is safe, even if they may experience a little bit of discomfort as a result of having to wear a mask. Students and teachers will wear masks indoors, including in restrooms at all times. However, students, as I mentioned previously, students may remove face coverings for meals and scheduled short breaks at the direction of staff, so long as they maintain appropriate social distance. Anyone who is medically unable to tolerate a face mask or appropriate facial covering will be required to submit a doctor's note and wear a face shield. Students will be required to wear masks and/or appropriate facial covering as a condition of our code of conduct. So in that sense, it is enforceable as what we consider to be appropriate conduct as part of attending school. The next question is, will students be required to wear masks outdoors, such as during recess, physical education, or in outdoor classrooms? Yes, again, this will be updated in our final reopening plan. Can you please explain how the portable barriers will work? Okay, now, the portable barriers that we described earlier, and for those of you who are new or just joining us for the third session, these portable barriers are a polycarbonate shield. They're portable. Students keep them as sort of a trifold that they will keep on their desks. They're transparent, and they've been tested to reduce the spread of microbial particles. We've gotten some feedback about those supplies, those materials, as part of our conversation, and we're looking at making some changes as to how we want to deploy those, or how we want students to deploy those, because there were some concerns expressed in the chat room about that. So let's walk through this. So we've actually revised our thinking on how this will work since last night's session. Portable barriers will be in our classrooms when students arrive, and students will use them throughout the day as needed, as they move to different learning spaces. However, they will leave it at school to be cleaned at each night. It will not go back and forth to school with them. And when we heard some of the comments in the chat room, we realized that, moving those barriers around between home and school, obviously there were some concerns from families who maybe thought that there was a possibility, or there was potential that moving those portable barriers into the home might also transfer, the possibility of transferring the COVID virus, and certainly back and forth as these things are being transported on buses, et cetera. And also it's very difficult. I know we're working on a safe routes to school plan, and some students may be either walking or riding their bikes, and that could be a tremendous inconvenience to students who are using safe routes to school, either via walking or cycling. Portable barriers will be in our classrooms when students arrive, and students will use them throughout the day as needed as they move to different learning spaces. However, they will leave it at school to be cleaned each night and will not go back and forth to school with them. So I just want to reemphasize that. We're going to work with our principals and facilities team to figure out the logistics for each building. So that's information that we will be providing for you prior to September 8th. Does the district have a published pandemic plan? Yes, we do. We've had that plan actually published for a few months now. That is actually the work of Mr. John Galino, who was our Safety and Compliance Director here in the district. The district's pandemic safety plan is linked to the reopening webpage under Resources. So again, that's been up for a while now, but it has been, I believe it's been updated to reflect some of the specificity associated with the COVID-19 considerations. One of the questions we received in the chat room recently is this: what constitutes an appropriate mask? Cloth face coverings are meant to protect other people in case the wearer is unknowingly infected but does not have symptoms. Masks or cloth facial coverings must completely cover staff members' noses and mouths, and when we say staff members, I think we mean all staff and students. Staff members and students' noses and mouths in order to prevent the transmission of virus-containing droplets. The CDC website has detailed information regarding masks and cloth facial coverings. The link is included in our reopening plan, along with a lot of other resources. Again, I encourage you to visit the reopening plan on our district website. Staff members are required to wear a mask or cloth facial covering at all times when not seated at their individual desk and or not instructing students from teacher safe zone. This includes in all common areas of the school buildings, in all hallways, in all restrooms, and in all other congregate settings, to include playgrounds, common office areas, conference rooms, and classroom spaces. Staff members with healthcare provider documentation stating they are not medically able to tolerate a mask and or cloth face covering cannot be required to do so and will be directed to wear the face shield provided to them, and we've ordered those as well. In all cases, we need all staff and students to socially distance to the extent practical. Students are always required to wear a mask or cloth facial covering with the exception of meal service times. This includes in all common areas of the school buildings, in all hallways, in all restrooms, and during recess. Students with healthcare provider documentation stating they are not medically able to wear a mask and or face covering cannot be required to do so and will be directed to wear a face shield provided to them by their physician and or South Orangetown Central School District, and to socially distance to the extent practical. New York State Education Department, CDC, and Department of Health guidelines will be followed when enforcing the wearing of a face or a protective mask and or cloth face covering, including when individuals should not be wearing a mask or cloth face covering. South Orangetown Central School District staff will instruct students, parents, guardians, contractors, and vendors on 1, the proper way to wear a mask and cloth face coverings, 2, washing hands prior to putting on or removing their face covering, 3, proper way to discard disposable face coverings, the importance of routine cleaning of reusable face coverings, and lastly, not to share face coverings with anyone. South Orangetown Central School District has secured multiple vendor pathways for maintaining an adequate supply of personal protective equipment. You'll hear me refer to that as PPE throughout the presentation. Another question we've received is, will there be safe passage routes listed for walkers and bikers to get to school? We're scheduled to meet with the town of Orangetown this week to review the number of crossing guards needed to support the potential increase in the number of students walking and biking to school. We will share crossing guard locations with families once these locations are confirmed. The next topic, we've been getting a lot of feedback and comments and questions about our screening procedures. Very important topic, and let's see if we can, clarify any sort of misconceptions or needed guidance in this area. We covered this last night, but based on the number of questions we received, I want to review a couple of things. One of the questions we received was, will South Orangetown Central School District require COVID-19 testing of students and staff before school begins? No, we will not. We don't really have the authority, nor do we have the expertise to do that. Again, we're educators, and that really is the authority and expertise and realm of the New York State Department of Health. We will continue to adhere to New York State Department of Health, New York State, and CDC guidance. We'll be implementing active and passive screening of students and staff in collaboration with the Rockland County Department of Health. So it's going to be a collaboration. We're going to need help. Certainly if we identify a student who has the potential, or a staff member who has potential of being infected, we'll work with the County Department of Health to ensure that proper steps are taken. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in the next few moments. Another question we received was, will students and staff returning from travel to states or countries under New York State quarantine order be required to quarantine? Short answer is yes. Students and staff are required to abide by the New York State COVID-19 travel advisory, which is linked to the reopening webpage at SOCSD.org, our school webpage. The school district cannot monitor the movement or behavior of students and staff outside of school and must rely on everyone to comply with state guidelines. So yeah, again, we don't have the capacity to do that sort of that level of contact tracing outside of school, but there are agencies that do. So it's important that we all work together and, take care of each other. That's what this is all about. Students required to quarantine should contact their school nurse and will participate via remote learning for the duration of their quarantine as directed by the Rockland County Department of Health. In the event that the school district discovers that a student or staff member is not compliant with state quarantine guidelines and comes to school, that individual will be sent home immediately, and we will contact the Department of Health to take the next steps, the necessary steps. The next topic, what is the district's plan for screening? Each morning that students are scheduled to attend school, all students will be required to submit the home screening COVID-19 questionnaire to confirm that they are symptom-free and are not required to quarantine due to travel or exposure to a person who has tested positive for COVID-19. Parents will be required to perform a temperature check. That's my upstate accent. I say temperature, but it's actually pronounced temperature. The temperature check of their children. Questionnaires will be submitted electronically to school administrators for daily review. As students arrive at school, students and staff will be actively screened with equipment that will identify those of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or greater. Those identified with a temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or greater will be discreetly routed to the nurse's office for a secondary temperature check and screening. If the secondary screening indicates potential signs of COVID-19, they will be sent home immediately. Students will be isolated and parents will be required to pick them up within 30 minutes. It is critically important that parents keep children who are not feeling well or who are symptomatic at home. We've received some questions about whether children should stay home if they don't have a fever, but have symptoms of other illnesses. It's kind of like the common comment that we've received, and maybe I've made this comment myself, which is, if a kid has a sniffle, or I have a sniffle, or does that mean we're going to get sent home or quarantined? And possibly, I don't mean to be overreactive, but the fact is we're still in this pandemic situation, and we don't want to overreact, but we do want to be conservative, and we do want to make sure, and I think most folks appreciate the fact that, and we certainly don't want to inconvenience anybody, but we do have a duty to perform here, and that is really to keep each other safe. So we are relying on ourselves and our parents to perform the daily temperature check. Actually, parents before coming to school, again, do those temperature checks, and then once they get to school, we'll do that screening. We need parents to complete the daily screening questionnaire, and in the cases where they may be unsure, to use their best judgment. Again, the phrase common sense comes up a lot, not just for as we're reviewing student and staff for potential COVID symptoms, but also to, again, just to out of an abundance of caution. because again, we don't know where that could lead, and it could be, could be disastrous. So we want to be careful. And I can't overstate that enough. Facilities. The question we received was, can you provide more detailed information regarding ventilation and air conditioning? And I know I've sort of hinted, I will say hinted around about it, but I have given some answers that do require further detail. So let's get into that to the best of our ability. Our schools are not equipped with hospital-grade HVAC systems or central air conditioning. The New York State Education Department requires schools to meet or exceed American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers standards, which all of our schools do. By reducing the number of students in our classrooms by 50%, we are able to increase the amount of fresh air per person, and our facilities team is working to bring in as much fresh air as possible into our buildings. Our facilities team has cleaned and tested our exhaust fans to ensure that they are operating at full capacity, and this team is also assessing our HVAC systems to maximize the filtration capability. MERV values on our current air handler filtration systems range from a rating of 4 to 8. Renovating our district's HVAC systems to upgrade climate control is among the items listed in the district's master capital plan and will require substantial capital investment, construction and installation time, and New York State Education Department approval. The district will utilize outdoor spaces for learning, lunch and recess, and the opening of windows for fresh air to the extent practical in all school buildings. Another question we received is, has the district considered installation of ultraviolet lighting as a tool for disinfectant? New York State Education Department does not currently permit UV lighting in schools. Our next category is attendance. First question in this category is this: if a student is out sick on their in-person instruction week, can they still attend school virtually? Will they be considered absent? Wow, that is a great question, and I had not thought about it. So let's talk about that. Students who are ill should notify the school and can attend virtually. This will count as a present. This opens up a whole range of possibilities for student participation when they can't be in school. Illness. I know that we've talked a little bit about snow day attendance, so other applications of a virtual learning environment that have yet to be explored, and we will do so. Again, I think this opens up a whole realm of possibilities for schooling for the future. But right now, know that if you are ill, you have the prospect, and you're a student, you have the prospect of attending virtually in accordance with our distance learning program. What are the provisions or accommodations that will be made in the event of a power outage at my home during the week of remote learning? Will assignments need to be made up? In the event of a power outage, any impacted students will be given ample time to make up work and seek additional support from the teacher if necessary. When I was a kid, we used to talk about our dog eating our homework. So apparently that's no longer going to be a reason to not do your homework. Now we have the power outage. I don't want to jinx us on this one too, because we know that technology can be temperamental. So we just want to make sure that our systems are redundant, that we have backup work for students or backup routines for students that they can deploy, or for teachers, and that they can deploy in the event of a technology failure. And we'll have more to talk about that as we move forward, and I'm certain we have a lot to learn about that as well. The next topic is schedules, our schedules. When comparing Group A to Group B has 11 fewer days in school than Group A when factoring in holidays from September through June. How will that be remedied? We will be reviewing the calendar to balance out the instructional days for Group A and for Group B. And we may have to obviously modify the calendar to make those adjustments. We may have to move weeks, or but we'll do that in plenty of time, just so folks can attend to some child care concerns or considerations as it relates to the rededication of days from one group to the other group. We're also going to use the calendaring of our superintendent conference days as a means to balance the days between the two groups. So we'll have more to present, but I will present the revised calendar to the Board of Education. It is one of their responsibilities is to approve the calendar. So we'll obviously we're going to have to make revisions to the calendar to balance that out. And of course, we may want to wait on that as well a little bit, given that those in-person days could shift for a variety of reasons. As I mentioned earlier, we anticipate snow days, emergency closing days, and the like that could also shift in-person days between the groups. So let's not overcommit to that just yet until we have an opportunity to really think that through. And then maybe we keep some of those spare days in reserve in the event that we need to rededicate them for the purposes of balancing the calendar later. But we'll have more to say about that, and we certainly will make every effort to ensure that both groups have the same amount of days. Is there a possibility of a screencast to be developed as an example of what a remote learning day looks like, so parents can prepare their students and caregivers? And I love that idea, and we are working on that. Principals are making videos that will talk about, describe, illustrate what a typical day will look like both in person and at home. We are also working with instructional coaches and teachers to create videos that will walk a child through a typical lesson or day. Anything that's going to reduce any sort of anxiety or apprehension about returning to school. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. We know that it just makes sense that people are afraid to come to school for a variety of reasons, because this is all new. There are a lot of unknowns. Even we've done our best. We really have reviewed as much as we can possibly in anticipation of coming back to school. But we understand that students, staff and students alike, really are going to need a lot of preparation. And we're not going to rush headlong into this. We're going to give folks a few days in the beginning to really acclimatize to this new routine. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, those videos are really an important piece of that, and I think that they can, for illustrative purposes, and we're working on those now. The next category is curriculum. And here's a question under curriculum that we haven't seen yet, so this looks good. It seems like in-person instruction will be the same as remote instruction, but with kids in the building. That's a great way of putting it. How will the in-person experience be enhanced over a full virtual model? Students attending in person will have the benefit of being able to interact with their teachers and peers in a more collaborative and natural manner. And I said this in other sessions, and I truly believe this, and I think it's sort of a cornerstone of certainly of my educational philosophy. Learning is important. Academics are certainly very important, and it's our core competency. It's our mission to elevate, engage, and inspire. But another one of our core competencies, and is as important or even more important, is sort of the socialization, the social emotional aspect of what it means to go to school. So even though the instructional experience will be the same, hopefully identical for both groups, the opportunity to be in a classroom, to return some sense of normalcy to our students is critical. It's super important. And if we are to emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic, this crisis, this nationwide crisis, better than when we went into it, we have to be really mindful of the fact that students need to relearn how to be together. And at least in the short term, in the near term, learning to be together is going to involve being respectful of each other's space, of physical space, being mindful of being protective of our own health as well as the health of those around us. So that's the benefit of coming into school. Some students and some families may not be ready for that emotionally or physically, medically. And we get that some folks, and we respect the idea that some won't be coming back on a full-time basis, that they'll be doing that remote learning. And we want to make that experience for them, for those folks who are in the 100% learning model, as productive as it is for those students who are in person. But know that those students who are coming in person are now are reacquainting themselves with the community, with society. And that's important. That's a function of public education. There's a real public benefit to public schools. And I'm not saying, nothing against private schools or charter schools or some of those other options that children are involved with, or homeschooling. And I know many of our families are exploring a lot of those options or have been exploring those options. But that's not the mission of those options. The mission that we serve is to make a literate, informed, healthy society. There's a public benefit to public schools. And that was why public schools were started in the first place. And that's what we are committed to doing. And we know that it's important as we raise healthy, informed citizens, our future voters, our future Americans, people who are productive, responsible citizens. They have to learn to be in society. And that's something we should never take for granted. So to me, that is the benefit of having the in-person experience. And if there ever comes a point, as we are reintroducing our students to schooling and to society as a whole, if it ever comes to a point where it becomes unsafe because the public health data suggests that it isn't safe, then we'll return to a 100% distance learning model, and we're familiar with that. We've practiced it, and we're good at that as too. We can go back into that. We can go to that default setting if need be, knowing that at some point in time, on terms that are acceptable to our families, to reintroduce and reacquaint our students with schooling in the physical sense. So that's the difference. Next question. How will art classes operate this year? Great question. Students who are in person will work on art projects in class, while students at home may be taking some art materials home with them to work on the same projects. So, the idea that we have some hands-on activities for our students that are not computer-based, that are not oriented to a screen. We're certainly going to become experts at the digital technology, but we also have some really neat opportunities through our art department to engage in some non-digital activities. And I had an opportunity to speak to one of our art teachers today at the high school, and we're really excited about this. We did, over the summer, we were participating in our summer STEAM camp. The A in STEAM stands for art, And we did a lot of that work, and it was truly a lot of fun to have students, to deliver those home kits to our students, those supplies, those materials, so they could have the opportunity to create and produce something that wasn't necessarily digital, because that's important as well. Next category, special education and PPS. PPS stands for Pupil Personnel Support. What assistance will be available to parents of significantly cognitively disabled students who cannot get their child to engage in remote work? Well, it's difficult for anybody to engage in remote work. And we know that we have students who, for whatever reason, are fragile, whether they have cognitive issues or other issues. And it's challenging for anybody, but it becomes especially challenging for students who would struggle with classwork under optimal circumstances, let alone a COVID outbreak. Our students with cognitive disabilities who are struggling to engage will work collaboratively with their program and teachers to adjust their supports. A CSE, Committee on Special Education meeting, may need to convene to consider all options. Remember, we do provide individualized education plans for our students, our students who have special needs. So, in all of these cases, in the event that we need to adjust a student's program, if your child does have an IEP, regardless of the initial perceived disability or learning ability, then refer to or contact your building principal or the Committee on Special Education, and they will provide you with an opportunity to convene to discuss all options. Some of these questions are kind of new. Some of the questions we've gone through before, and some of these are new. So every session we've had is very exciting for me as well. And some of these questions are being typed in as we're speaking. So I'm glad I have a lot of my colleagues online with me. I want to say thank you to them. Is a student in a BOCES program entitled to a SOCSD Chromebook? A SOCSD Chromebook. SOCSD stands for South Orangetown Elementary School. So I wonder if I think it means SOCSD, the South Orangetown Central School District Chromebook, because we do have that's a sort of a K through 12 resource. If a South Orangetown Central School District student is classified with a special needs student, we work closely with the BOCES program to identify the best device to meet their needs. P-TECH, for example, provides students with devices. Any student who attends one of our COVE programs from another district obtains their technology from their home district. So we'll coordinate that effort because not everybody who physically attends South Orangetown Central School District is a South Orangetown student. We do provide spaces for out-of-district students to work here if they happen to be involved in a BOCES program, and BOCES is renting those spaces from the school district. But kids don't know that. They just know they're together. They're in a cohort. They're in a room, and they're all the same. And we want to make sure that every student has equitable access based on their needs, on their individual needs. So we'll make sure that we treat everyone fairly, regardless of what where their home district is. How will I be able to assess whether my child is going to be productive in this new environment. And again, I just want to make sure that folks know that we are still talking about students with disabilities, students who have an IEP or who are classified by our Committee on Special Education. Our Pupil Personnel Services team, school counselors, school social workers, school prevention counselors, and school psychologists. This team is committed to supporting our students as they adjust to the new normal and will work collaboratively with parents to address the individual needs of any child. So that's the final question we had under special education. A new topic, shifting gears a little bit, the next topic is technology. Our students participating in the hybrid model required to bring their personal or school-issued devices to school every day? The answer is yes. All students must bring their devices, whether personal or school-issued, to school every day that they attend in person. Please note, due to the pandemic, the district will limit the sharing of devices and resources, and that just stands to reason. Again, I'm thinking about my kiddos, my little ones at the bus stops, again, with the Chromebook tucked under their arms and face mask on, getting ready to come back to school. That visual is very clear in my head. And we think, they need a little extra support, obviously, because they're young ones, they're kiddos. But, our middle school kids developmentally and our high school kids, goodness knows some of the adults, including myself, we need help. Sometimes we forget things. And so it won't be the end of the world if one of our students leaves the mobile device at home. We get that these things happen. So just ask parents to sort of make those preparatory checks in the morning. You have everything you need to be successful today. Get into that routine. Good news is they probably won't be carrying around as many textbooks, and they probably won't need their lockers. They won't be using their lockers in many instances. But most everything they're going to need, to include some of the learning management systems, the software, will all be on those Chromebooks or those mobile devices. Not everybody's going to have a Chromebook. There'll be some other devices that, depending upon what device the student is comfortable with. So I think there are some advantages to that, and we were probably moving in that direction anyway, even prior to the pandemic. This just basically pushed us a little further along in that direction. The district is currently working on securing mobile devices for all of our students. You may have heard that called the one-to-one initiative. However, supply chain issues may delay the deployment of district devices to our students. Before you go out and buy an expensive system for your child, be sure that it's not you're not over purchasing at this point. As we said a little bit earlier, all you really need is a Chromebook. I use my own device as an example. It's got a web browser on it. It's got a camera on it. It's got a microphone on it. It doesn't have a ton of software. I kind of like it like that because I don't get as many viruses on my computer. It's not a super sophisticated system. It's cost effective, and it's lightweight. And again, I have a web browser. Software. I know I had a question today from a parent, wanted to know what software needed to be purchased. You don't need to purchase any software other than the fact that you need a web browser on the device. All of our applications, as they relate to the students' classroom experience in classroom or at home, will be web-based, and we have licenses for all that software. So I don't get too anxious about what type of system to buy. The fact is that we while we don't have currently don't have a device for everybody. We're working towards that. We understand that many students already have devices, and we'll do what we need to do to make sure that every student has a device, whether it's one that they bring from home, whether it's one that they already have issued to them from the school district, or if we need to sort of redeploy devices after they've been sanitized to students. We'll make sure that everybody has something to work with on day one. Probably if we're giving advice to somebody at home in terms of what equipment they needed, I would probably be more focused on your Wi-Fi setup at home, the sort of that bandwidth issue. I know that because we are in the pandemic, there are parents who work at home, and many of our parents are Zooming, conferencing, often as part of their jobs. I know I was doing that for a little bit. It's difficult. I really have great respect for people who can work at home. It's a challenge for sure. But one of the challenges is obviously related to the technology in the household. One of this idea that there are multiple devices running at the same time, and you want to make sure you have capacity to be able to do that, especially if you have multiple students that live in the same home, as well as parents who are working and eating up that bandwidth. So maybe that would be something I would be more concerned about if you were looking about investing in a home system. Okay, if a student chooses to use their own personal device in a quote-unquote bring your own device model, we request that they bring their mobile device to school as well. All right, I'm going to be mindful of the time here. I see that it's 8:04, so I know that we have a few more topics to cover, and we'll get through those. I think we're looking pretty good. What is the district standard device? Well, the ones we purchase are the Dell. I'm certainly not advertising for Dell right now, but that's the ones that we purchase off of our state contract. It's the Dell Chromebook, such as the one I'm using right now. We purchased that because we've had good experience with that. It's reliable and it's sturdy. I've dropped mine a few times, and it's in the parking lot out back. It still seems to work just fine. Dell Chromebooks come in different styles and capabilities. Some are standard Chromebooks, much like a laptop, and others are 2-in-1s with touch screens and convert to tablets. Convertible 2-in-1 Chromebooks are not required for remote learning, but may provide additional flexibility for your child. The primary consideration for purchasing a Chromebook is to ensure it has enough memory and storage. The recommended memory is between 4 to 6 gigabytes of memory and 32 to 64 gigabytes of storage. The benefit of a Chromebook over a tablet, such as an iPad, is the built-in keyboard. Keyboarding skills are important when engaging in remote learning. Not to say that we won't be looking at other ways to input data into the system. Your teachers will tell you a little bit more about that because they're certainly experts at that at this point. What about iPads? While the district will be implementing an iPad one-to-one initiative for kindergarten and first grade, a Chromebook or laptop may be more effective for remote learning at the upper grade levels. iPads are effective devices for younger learners due to the touch screen surface or the touch screen interface. However, parents have reported that access to remote learning resources for upper grades was cumbersome in the spring with the iPad. In particular, accessing Google Classroom assignments and resources seem to be more efficient with a Chromebook as opposed to an iPad. If you choose an iPad for remote learning, we recommend that you also purchase a compatible keyboard so that your child can develop keyboarding skills. What device do students need to participate in Zoom breakout rooms? Again, this is a feature of Zoom that many of our students have expressed a real affinity for. They've gotten some real productive work out of the Zoom breakout rooms. While there are limitations for using Chromebooks with Zoom, there are workarounds that can help address some of these limitations. As an example, While users who join using a Chromebook are unable to join a breakout room, the main room can be used as an alternative session for these users. But Zoom's Android and iOS clients can participate in breakout rooms. Students have other means for collaborating that include Google Meet, Google Classroom, and Jamboard. A lot of options, a lot of workarounds. But again, I would defer to whatever tool or whatever functionality that your teacher suggests as part of her or his lesson design. And the teachers will have more to say about that when you return in the fall. Is a student in a BOCES program eligible to receive a school-issued device from South Orangetown Central School District? I think I've answered that already, but the short answer is yes. We will definitely create those availability for those students. We received questions from parents who indicated on the parent survey that their children have a personal mobile device to use for hybrid remote learning, without realizing that the device would need to be taken to school as well. I'm sorry, I got to read that over again. We received questions from parents who indicated on the parent survey that their children have a personal mobile device to use for We received questions from parents who indicated on the parent survey that their children have a personal mobile device to use for hybrid remote learning, without realizing that the device would need to be taken to school as well. If you answered that your child has a personal device, but now need to change your answer, please go ahead and resubmit the survey with updated information. The survey link is posted right under the quick links at SOCSD.org, and we'll leave that survey open until 8 a.m. tomorrow. If the child's school-issued Chromebook is over 3 years old, will South Orangetown replace it? No. The district replacement cycle for student Chromebooks is every 4 years. From our experience, Dell Chromebooks are viable for our high school students for 4-year tenure. However, if a device is experiencing performance-related issues, please be sure to contact the Student Tech Support Portal to technical issues so they can be addressed, the technical issues. The Student Help Desk link will be on the district's main webpage under Quick Links. As a personal experience, my daughter graduated from Tappan Zee High School. She went through a few years here, and she graduated from here. And she used, I was a little upset with her. She used her iPhone the whole time. She didn't bother, she didn't get a Chromebook until she was in 11th grade. And I asked her why, and she said, well, my iPhone works just fine. I would just, that's an extreme example, but just so you know that there's some real flexibility there in terms of which devices can be used. So don't get overwhelmed by that. But if you do need assistance in selecting, if you don't have a device, kindly indicate as much as so to your school principal. Will PowerSchool be open so that the K through 5 parents can keep track of students' work? Yes. The district recently sent home information to our elementary families on how to create an account to access the PowerSchool portal. Parents will be able to access multiple students via the same PowerSchool portal account. An information session for parents on how to create a PowerSchool portal account will be forthcoming. We expect to host this online session next week. Equity is the next topic. How will the school ensure that the most needy students do not fall behind? For example, our ENL students, our English language learners, parents who have limited English. The district is taking steps to ensure that students with IEPs receive the services they need, and our students who are English language learners will also receive their services. We have an excellent special education and English as a second language teaching staff, as well as the pupil personnel services team, including school-based social workers and counselors that work directly with these and other specific student populations to ensure that they are not falling behind. This is even more challenging in a remote learning environment, but again, our team learned a lot last spring, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to work with these students in person when school begins. Transportation. How will transportation work for students going to BOCES either in the morning or in the afternoon? The district will continue to coordinate with BOCES on transporting students to BOCES programs being held in person. We are currently working on finalizing transportation. Now, we have a whole list of miscellaneous comments that we want to get through before 8:30. So let's take a crack at these. These should be exciting. Miscellaneous. My child will be attending his first year at P-TECH. Will P-TECH be following the same guidelines as South Orangetown Central School District? Although it is located in the former Tappan Zee Elementary School building, Hudson Valley P-TECH is a Rockland BOCES program. Questions from students and families regarding P-TECH's reopening plan should be directed to that school's administrators. Can these types of meetings, like we're engaging in now, to the parents continue throughout the school year? I'm so happy to see that question. I will hold parent chats and other informal exchanges periodically throughout the school year with parents and members of the school community. I've learned so much over these past few sessions, and I'm excited. I feel like last night I felt like Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, although it felt that incredible, and I was overwhelmed in a really good way by all the comments and questions that we've received and the level of participation. It's really exciting, and it really is changing my perspective on the opening of school this year. So thank you for that. But I think we do need to keep this going. I think it's invaluable, and we'll work on ways to structure that so it's convenient and accessible for as many of our community members as possible. We will certainly look to use our Family Engagement Center to support this request, along with our building administrators. Will the district be providing childcare? The short answer is no. We are focused on maximizing space for the purposes of in-person instruction. We continue to work with our community partners and will keep our community informed of any new childcare resources that become available. If an elementary-aged child is attending a childcare setting in their virtual weeks whose schedule doesn't allow them to log into all synchronous sessions or doesn't provide a person to work one-on-one with a child who is just learning to read and write, will they be penalized for this? Will they be at a disadvantage due to not having this one-on-one help? And that's a real significant concern. So a student will not be penalized if they can't access their learning remotely during certain hours if they are attending a childcare setting that prevents them from doing so successfully. And we'll look at, depending upon the child, depending upon the age level, the developmental considerations, we'll look at providing those accommodations. I say that in air quotes because some of those accommodations could be informal, not necessarily formalized through our Committee on Special Education or even through the 504 process. But indeed, every kid is different. Every student learns differently. I've often heard the expression, meet the children where they're at. That's a strong philosophy here in the district, and we're going to continue to work that to the best of our ability. Hey, here's a chat question. Why are you repeating what you already covered yesterday? That's a little metacognition. It's a good opportunity for me to reflect on that. I think the governor really wants me to give 3 standalone presentations, just because not everybody was going to go to all 3 sessions. I am amazed and impressed, and certainly I love the fact that so many of you have attended all 3 sessions, and I'm grateful for that. But those of you who may not have attended one of the previous webinars may have heard me repeat some information. The reason for this is that we continue to receive questions regarding material that has already been covered from people either who did not attend the other webinars or those who did attend and may have missed the information or misinterpreted the information. And sometimes that happens because I'm not always clear. It's oftentimes it's me. I try to be a good communicator, but I need all the help I can get. We want to make sure that all of our families have the information they need about health and safety procedures, as well as how students may access their education in a hybrid or 100% remote model. And that is worth repeating if needed. Okay, here's a new question. Will the construction in our buildings be completed by September 8th? Yes. Work is moving along nicely, and our staff are busy cleaning and preparing spaces for school reopening. The South Orangetown Middle School Library renovation may not be ready for the opening of school, however. Dr. Corey, building principal, has made contingency plans in the event the library is not open for the start of the new school year. That's not uncommon for construction projects, that we have to find sort of swing space for students, but usually it's temporary. We do try to make those accommodations as well as we can, but we're going to expedite that and get those spaces online as quickly as possible, because we need those spaces. Here's a question. I am confused about your explanation of face masks versus face shields. Can you please clarify? Sure, I will. Students are always required to wear a mask or cloth facial covering, with the exception of meal service times and those designated breaks, scheduled breaks that we talked about. Those students with healthcare provider documentation stating they are not medically able to wear a mask and or cloth face covering will be directed to wear a clear face shield provided to them by their physician and or South Orangetown Central School District, and to socially distance. So in the event that you can't wear a face mask, or you're medically unable to wear a face mask, you may be able to wear a face shield in the event that you have a note from your physician or medical provider. Next question. Do we provide masks for our children, or is the school providing masks for them? The district has purchased washable masks for all students, one per student, to begin the school year. However, we encourage families to provide their children with cloth face masks, and we'll be sharing information about wearing masks in the coming days. Our buildings will also have disposable masks to provide to students, staff, and essential visitors if needed. If families need assistance in obtaining masks or other resources on opening day, they should email SOCSD@socsd.org, and we will work to assist these families. We set that email account up last March when we did the initial closure because of COVID. It's been extremely helpful. Sort of a one-channel, it'd be very confusing to communicate with all the different emails. But if you need assistance as it relates to this sort of COVID issue, COVID concerns, or issues created because of COVID, that's a great email to know, SOCSDcares@socsd.org, and we will route those accordingly. Will the third graders still be selecting instruments for instrumental music instruction? Yes, we plan to provide instrumental music lessons as we did in the spring. This will be done before school virtually in grades 3 through 5. Can working parents drop off children before school start time to avoid them riding the bus? No, we've actually never done that, I don't believe, because of the supervision issue. So there could be some concerns associated with having students who are unsupervised. Schools are not able to accommodate students prior to the start of drop-off time. Drop-off time begins at 8:10 a.m. at our middle school, and at Tappan Zee High School, for South Orangetown Middle School and Tappan Zee High School, drop-off time begins at 8:10 a.m. For our elementary schools, William O. Schaefer and Cottage Lane, drop-off time is 9:15 a.m. For the safety of our students, parents must comply with these restrictions. Next question, and I do think this does require some clarification because I think I made a mistake yesterday when I stated this. The question is, if the pool is closed, does that mean no swim team this year? The answer is this. If interscholastic athletics are allowed to commence after September 21st, the South Orangetown Middle School pool will be open to our interscholastic athletic teams, swim teams. However, the pool will not be used by physical education classes nor for outside usage by our community because we really have no way of managing that safely. So the pool would only be used for the swim teams, interscholastic athletic swim teams, if we are to continue with interscholastic athletics after September 21st. So that's a change from what I said yesterday, where I said the pool was closed to everybody. The exception being that the swim teams would be allowed to the competitive swim teams that are interscholastic swim teams, not the Sharks or the age group swimming teams, but the actual Tappan Zee High School swim team will be allowed to use the pool. My child cannot carry heavy loads. I submitted a note from her specialist last year. How can she be accommodated since the kids will not have access to lockers? Here's the answer. Any student who has a medical condition that requires special accommodations should notify their building principal. If necessary, a 504 committee will be convened to develop a plan, and so work with your principal to that end. What will indoor recess look like? Basically, building administrators will work closely with staff to organize activities that allow students to de-stress and have fun. Can we see what the portable barriers look like? I think we probably got a shipment of them in today. We're receiving shipments every day of equipment and supplies, and it's really we're working busily to unpack and set those out so we can start distributing them. Over the coming weeks, we'll be sharing photos of equipment, signage, and classrooms with our families. Our schools will also be releasing videos the week of August 31st to show students and their families what they can expect when they come to school. Next question. Have you looked into tents or trailers for kids to do remote learning under the supervision of a TA, teaching assistant? School districts, 90 minutes of talking, I haven't quite mastered that yet, so please bear with me. School districts are required to submit projects to the New York State Office of Facilities Planning for review and approval. This process takes time and can be costly. Even with trailers, the available space remains an issue. Tents that are not temporary, not taken down and set up daily, are not allowed by New York State Office of Facilities Planning as they are not code compliant, and acceptable shelters must also be approved. That includes things like I had a suggestion for like an inflatable, like Conversio's inflatable tennis courts, same thing. So in the event that it's a permanent facility, it has to meet the approval of the New York State Office of Facilities, and that is a very time-consuming and costly issue. For those students taking Regents classes, will New York State end-of-year Regents exams be scheduled? The New York State Education Department has not yet released dates for the 2020-2021 Regents exams. Next question. Will Tappan Zee High School remain an SAT testing site? Yes. Tappan Zee High School Principal Rudy Arrieta is currently working to finalize arrangements with the College Board for SAT testing this fall. Next question. Is there a way that orchestra, band, and choral can still be taught? These courses will still be taught and follow specific social distancing guidelines established for these courses. Students will also be able to participate virtually. Last question. Last question that we can get to tonight, although, again, we feel that there's always an opportunity to learn and hear more questions. So certainly we're going to keep these lines of communication open informally as well as through our building level staff. Final question for the evening is, will the school provide art supplies to 100% remote students? Again, we covered that, but I think it does bear repeating because it is important. Because I don't want parents going out and thinking that they have to go purchase art supplies. Supplies for students working remotely will be provided to the greatest extent possible, or we will differentiate the lesson to ensure all students can engage on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that your artistic students may not be raiding your pantry for macaroni noodles or mom or dad's workbench for spare paint or those types of things, or craft items around the house, but that's between you and your student, and certainly we wouldn't, we know that every child is entitled to a free and appropriate education, and certainly we'll provide those with whatever supplies that are necessary to engage in the lesson. So that for this evening, again, it did satisfy the requirement from the governor of the state of New York, requiring the school districts to hold 3 sessions. I'll be very honest with you folks. I thought that was a very daunting task on such a short notice that we were informed of this last Friday. I was, and I didn't know how we were going to pull that off. But to my surprise, to my absolute joy, I believe that we found a new way to have a two-way dialogue as a community, and I think we've we've added to the functionality of our communications function here in the district. And again, I think the word joy, I'm joyful right now. I'm absolutely enthusiastic at what this school year is going to bring for our families, and most importantly for our children. Once more, thanks to all who have turned in questions over the past 3 information sessions, provided us with absolutely meaningful information that we can use to make these experiences safe and valuable. We expect that principals at this point and teachers will sort of, we're going to hand over the reins to them to a certain degree so they can start providing you with some sort of boots on the ground information that you can use to be practical and get off to a good start. I know that you're all anxious to learn more about what it is you're going to need to get back to school. It's an exciting time. It's going to be a fun time, and we're going to meet these challenges together as a community, because that's what we do. We're very excited about that. We'll be gathering all the questions that have been answered into a single resource to be posted on our reopening webpage by Friday morning. That's this Friday morning. A lot of information, great resource, great references. You guys have been fantastic. I look forward to continuing to serve you, your families, your children. I want to give a special thank you to Mr. George Brady, who is now facing these sort of monumental, humongous challenges of keeping our technology running, but he did a fantastic job for these last 3 sessions. Also to Mrs. Alicia Koster, who is our Executive Director for Management and Financial Services. The 2 of them have been inextricably linked to me over these past 3 sessions in a socially distant and safe manner. And also to Miss Jennifer Citrolo, who has produced every one of these communications efforts. She is our communications director, and she has an innate sense of the needs of this community as it relates to communication and information. And I couldn't be happier with those 3 individuals in terms of helping pull off these 3 information systems, along with all the other things that they do. So thank you for that. We'll be working to finalize our reopening plan by the end of the day on Friday. I know we've changed a few things, we've tweaked a few things, but it's really important. And we've actually submitted the plan to the state of New York. It's been approved, it's acceptable. Hopefully you'll find it acceptable as well. Many of you have expressed some real positive feedback and some really good recommendations in terms of how do we make this work for the benefit of our students. But we'll have that formalized, finalized by Friday, and over the next few weeks, we'll be getting ready to welcome our students and our teachers back to school. We miss you guys tremendously. It's really not the same around here without you. And while I'm apprehensive in some ways, I'm anxious in some ways, I couldn't be happier in terms of welcoming you all back, and hopefully you'll reach out to me if you need any assistance or advice in the days ahead to make this the best possible experience for our kids. And with that, I will say to you all, good night, thank you very much, and stay safe.